All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. This is actually my last episode before my finale episode. So this is season 2, episode 33. I tried to get to 51. It didn't really work out like that. Life got the best of me. But I believe I'll be ending technically at 34. 34 is a good number. So thank you guys for your continued support, your encouragement, your love, your appreciation, all of that. I truly appreciate all that you guys have done, not just only for myself, but for the guests that I've had on here. You guys have rallied behind some of the things that they're doing, supporting them, their businesses, and so forth. I just ask that you guys continue to show that love, and lifting up, the fellow foster care and child welfare community, because it's something that's worthy to be lifted up. These individuals are people who have lived through it, or individuals who are directly working with people who are in care today. And, that's a very powerful statement there, because, people that are working in there today that I've had on here are, pretty much helping the next generation. So please help continue to support them, because, those are our next doctors, our next, presidents and what have you. But without further ado, if you so happen to stumble across this podcast and you don't know who I am, which I think is shocking, but it's okay. My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent a little bit over 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. Part being on the juvenile side, the other part being on the foster care side. I started advocating at 15, from aging out at 18. I continued my advocacy journey, doing national and local and state advocacy, working in congregate care, working in juvenile facilities, doing corrections, doing policy and programming with legislators locally and nationally, doing housing coordinating with transitional living for youth coming out of care. You name it, I've had my finger in it since I've aged out. And that's why I'm here. That's what brings me here, to be able to speak with all these different individuals who have their finger and their feet planted on the ground, from either their experience or, their expertise, or both. So without further ado, I'm gonna have my guests introduce themselves, because it's not about me, it's about them. So feel free.
Hi, guys. I am Lisa Arnett, and I am so happy to be here with Michael, and just grateful to have this experience.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. Um, I connected with you. I believe I was scrolling. I was scrolling, trying to kind of find people, and a lot of people don't know, because I mentioned this on my other podcast. Like, I'm a big person on connecting and networking. You never know what may come out of it. You never know who you may find, what it may feed into your life, or what have you. I've been doing that since a very young age. And I connected with you. I think I seen your TikTok. And I was like, I have to
Yes, I'd
connect
be
with
TikToking so much.
I had to connect with you, and I reached out, and that's how we are here today. But you guys, I'll be learning as you guys are learning. So without further ado, my first question: if you could share a little bit of how your story began, to whatever depth you're comfortable with, and help us build a timeline to your life now.
Yeah, so I mean, my story really began, I would say, even before I was born. My mom was a narcotics user, and I was born addicted to a couple different types of narcotics, and I went through a couple weeks of withdrawals. And at that time, they didn't really have a whole lot of protections in place for kids that were born addicted to narcotics. There wasn't really a rule book for that yet. And so we weren't on anybody's radar. And we lived with our biological parents for until I was 2. And then things kind of came to a head with the drug use and the neglect and the abuse that was going on in the home. And we were removed and put into foster care. And then I went through about 36 different foster homes, and I experienced, various types of abuse, sexual abuse, physical, emotional abuse. And it was just a really rough journey for me and my siblings. And we eventually all got separated. I think my oldest sister was the first one to be separated from us. And she was the one that kind of remembered everything that happened in our biological home. And it took a really big toll on her. And then we were separated from her, and there was 3 of us together. And we used to have weekly visits with her in Portland, Oregon. And one day those visits just stopped, and we didn't know why. We weren't allowed to see our sister anymore. And when I aged out of foster care, I got this packet in the mail, and I found out that my sister had been sex trafficked from foster care. And I was really young. I think I was like 19 or 20 at that point, and I didn't really know what to do with the information that I had found. I felt betrayed. I felt lied to. I felt sad. And I felt a lot of guilt that I wasn't able to be there for my older sister in the ways that she was there for us when we were younger. And, I just thought she must have felt so alone, and that, I just felt so much anger towards the state for keeping that a secret and, keeping all of us apart because we were all separated. And, I think she would have fared a lot better if she had a support system when she came back. She was trafficked to Canada, actually, when she was kidnapped, and the Canadian police found her and brought her back to the US. And the state failed on multiple fronts. They did not allow her to testify, and the 3 people that they had arrested involved in her trafficking got off. They didn't get anything. And that's when I really kind of started my social media journey. And I started talking about it, and I started looking for my sister, and I found out that there was actually a documentary made about my sister. I had no idea. I looked at the trailer for this documentary. Someone on TikTok told me about it. The documentary is called Playground. And I saw a picture of myself on there, and I was so shocked. And I was like, and then I saw my sister, and there was a lot of emotions. And I just started speaking out about trafficking and care and about lots of foster care experiences. I got into public speaking, and just last June, I was invited to go to Harvard. I attended a child protection course at Harvard because of my TikTok and my public speaking that I'm doing, and I'm just continuing down that road.
Awesome. Wow. It's been a journey.
It
It has
has
been a
been.
journey.
It has been. I
Um,
try to not get super long-winded. It's a
no,
lot to fit into a condensed
you're
amount of
okay.
time.
I love it because what I'm going to do is go back a little bit. I'm going to ask you some specific questions, because what I like to do with these is just have a natural conversation, but also ask the right questions that I believe that may help someone listening to this that may be a youth or someone who works with youth. I believe through that we can create transformative change through so many different ways by giving them the tools to be able to put on their tool belt. But
Absolutely.
one question I want to ask is, you spoke about siblings. So first and foremost, how many siblings were there? Were you guys um, first in the beginning kept together, or were you guys immediately separated?
So at first there was 6. My biological mother had 6 kids. She had 2 that were previously removed before us other 4 were born. And my little brother was the last one to be born. We're only 11 months apart. Kind of all of us are about a year apart. And the 4 of us were in our biological mom's home together. And when we were removed, I was 2. And we stayed together for a little while. We were in a biological family placement.
Mhm.
And the rest of us were kind of too young to protect ourselves. So like I said, my sister, her name's Michelle, the one that the documentary is made about. She was able to tell people, hey, this new place you put us in is doing the same things to us. And it's really hard for children to make adults really understand what types of sexual abuse is happening.
Yeah.
And I think children just have their own way of explaining things. And if adults aren't, in a position to be willing to listen and actually hear what a child is saying, then they won't. But we stayed in that home for a couple, no, maybe like a year. And then we kind of stayed together. Like, and Michelle was removed while we were in that placement. We went through about 10 other placements before the other three of us were adopted. I think I was 8 years old when we were adopted. And in that home, we experienced varied amounts of physical and sexual abuse as well. And so we were separated at that point after we were unadopted.
So Michelle was the oldest, right? And
Yes.
and I want to keep my questions kind of limited towards her because I know she's not here to really speak for herself. But would you say she was kind of like the parent, the one that protected you guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So a lot of times, and in the documentary, she speaks about this. That, like I said, the documentary is called Playground, and it's definitely a big, big trigger warning for anybody who watches it. I wish someone gave me a trigger warning, so I did not know that it was going to speak so much about my life, and it was
Mhm.
hard. But she speaks about how she was 4 years old and all of the rest of us were younger, and our mom would just pass out or disappear for a long time. And she talks about how she would have to go to the garbage can and find food for us. And she's like, I didn't know how to take care of kids and babies. And she was like, I just knew that we needed to eat. And she was definitely very parentified from a very, very young age.
Yeah. And then that's really hard, because I speak about parentification on here a lot, and more recently in season 2, I spoke about it more in depth. And I've been doing my research, because I wasn't parentified, but I know a lot of individuals that I'm close to out of what lived experience that were, and it's like different variations, but it all tend to be the same. Like I was speaking in my last podcast with Stormy Lucas Savage, and I was telling him that much like foster care in itself is like Russian roulette. You don't know who's gonna get the bullet and who's gonna make it. Um, when it comes to parentified youth, it's the same way, but a little bit more intense because either they keep that strength and that independency, and it takes them to their adulthood, or eventually, and it sucks to say this, but eventually, because they have to be so strong at a young age and they never found identity in self, sometimes they end up crumbling, to the pressures of adulthood and finding their ways in different pathways that aren't so pretty. That doesn't mean that they may not find their way out, but because I tell everybody, success isn't linear. Everybody finds their own way to thriving, and everyone has their own unique life. But that being a parentified youth, comes with side effects, and
Absolutely.
we don't see them all, and that's why I wanted to highlight that about your sister and your experience.
I think a lot of times with parentified youth, what we see is they did not get to experience a childhood.
Mhm.
And when they grow up, that realization, it hits people in different ways. And then they're going to try to find different ways, whether consciously or subconsciously, to try to get that freedom of really what childhood is supposed to be. People are going to definitely try to find different ways to experience that. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not.
Definitely. And I want to highlight something, you said, so there's no like discrepancy for anybody listening, because some people are like, well, most people go in foster care, they don't get no childhood. They got to grow up fast. So when we're talking about parentification is like doing the duties, the diligence of an actual parent. Now, being in survival mode, being institutionalized, having to have that fight or flight on all the time, that's different from parentification. You can experience both and one and the same, but they're two different things. You know,
Absolutely.
and I'm not a psychologist or a therapist to be able to give you the in-depth, terminologies between the difference. I just applaud you guys to take what I'm saying and do your own research and then pass it on. You know. um, but that speaks to my story. Like I have a really close friend of mine, that took care of her siblings, and for me, straight out the gate, at 11, I was on my own, do what I had to do. I remember, my mom had 5 strokes consecutively, eventually out of coming in and out of the juvenile system. Came back home one time and my mom was back from rehab and I had to take care of my mom. I had to bathe and wash my mom, which was a very weird experience because how do I explain this? My mom was one of my abusers. So to leave, and see my mom in a very vulnerable place, and it spoke to the amount of healing. Like I wouldn't say I was completely healed, but if I were to be put in that predicament, it would have been a very dangerous situation because my mom was vulnerable, and this is some truth that I'm speaking here, to you guys because I believe, it's going to be helpful to somebody. I was in a position where I could finally hurt, the person who tried to
Exactly.
kill me, many
Exactly.
times over, but it was really weird and it was a very hard thing that I had no one to really talk to, no one to really explain the emotions that I was feeling when I had to wash, bathe my mom, feed her, do all these things. And this woman used to invent weapons to whip me. And when I say invent weapons, my mom would go to Home Depot and get the little paint roofs you used to stir up the big ones and wrap duct tape, get a couple of them, wrap duct tape and write my name on it. She would go get water hoses,
How
and then
terrifying.
strip them, you know,
Yeah.
and just invent different stuff, to, whoop or beat, me and my siblings with, and my siblings have a different experience because none of them went into care, and they're older than me, but they have stories of their own which they experienced, and the saving grace, and I don't even know if it's really saving grace. The difference between me and my siblings is we all have different dads. My dad left and I had no one else but my mom. They
Yeah.
dads left, but they dads are still around. You
Yeah.
know, so there was still some saving grace there. So that's just something I wanted to share. Going back, you mentioned that you had been in 36 different placements.
Yeah. Well, I just want to admire you really quick for
Go ahead.
sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's a really great point that you brought up is there you are in a position of power above somebody who horrifically hurt you. And you see that person super vulnerable and you're like, yeah, I could get payback right now. Or like this, I'm having these weird thoughts, like where like I'm above you now, but you have that deep empathy where you're like, you took care of her still. And that's remarkable. And I really admire you for that. And I just appreciate that you shared that because those are some very complex emotions that would bring up. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing that.
No problem, no problem. I just feel, so like these are things, when I touch on things, one of the things I wanted to do on here is just be real and authentic, and I understand everybody can't be that way, but for me, in order to continue on this next level, because, I've done a lot of the childhood trauma, but in order to continue on the next level of, okay, I'm going to be in a relationship with somebody. I'm going to be a husband one day. I'm going to be a father one day. That next level of some of the trauma that may come back up, I have to be honest with my feelings and my emotions towards things. And the
Yeah.
best way to do that is sharing my truth. And I understand everyone does that in unique and different ways. But for me, I try to be as transparent because I know I'm not the only one feeling it. I know it's not, just unique to myself. I know, some other people went back home and, they were like, man, I could literally throw this toaster at this person and then I can run away.
Exactly.
So it's a commonality. It
And
happens.
I think that's definitely a very normal feeling to have. Like, why would I want to do anything nice for this person? They treated me horribly. But that just definitely speaks to like the deep level of empathy that's it's instilled in people.
Definitely.
Some
Um,
people.
yeah. Therapy works. So I just add that in there, because that was the saving grace. I remember going back and forth, um, home, back and forth from like when I was on the juvenile side. I would complete a program, go back home, same environment, different me, new tactics, new coping skills. Go back to juvenile because nothing had changed in my environment. Do the program successfully, get out, same stuff at home, you know. And I'm really lucky when I say that, like I had it because not a lot of people make it in that back and forth. Sometimes they
Yeah,
lose, sometimes they lose sight of hope in that back and forth. And I don't know what it was for me, specifically. I could chalk it up to God or whatever, but something kept me hopeful that this is not going to be forever. This is not going to be the end, especially in those hurtful and those abusive circumstances, because I had to do a lot of things I'm not proud of as a youth to survive, you know,
absolutely.
and those things I probably will never um, get out of my mind, you
Yeah,
know, from things of being outside, before I even went into the foster care system, into being in the foster care system and being in so many different placements, like, and this is another thing I'm speaking about on another podcast, because my experience was totally congregate care. There was no foster homes, anything like that, that put me inside the community. Like I was cornfield surrounded,
oh my gosh.
and and I really adapted well from the juvenile to transitioning to foster care. I adapted well to the institutional prison, big boss. Okay, when I get in here, I got to establish my ground.
Yeah,
And having to fight my way up the food chain, like that became a normality.
yeah, well, and there's
You
comfort
know,
in what you know. Absolutely.
definitely. And and the thing is, what I don't get an opportunity to do, because that's my experience, congregate care, So I'm really intrigued. Going back to my question about the
Yeah, sorry.
36. No, you're fine. Going back to my question of the 36, I'm really intrigued because I don't get to do this enough. Is talk about the institutionalization that happens from foster home perspective, from the people who keep getting bounced around and displaced and what have you, because there's a certain level of, what's the word? Um, it's not normal. I'm just saying it's not normal. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's not part of normalcy or what have you. To experience that, and it causes a deep effect. Many different type of effects that happen to individuals. But what was that experience like for yourself? And if you feel comfortable, why were you moved so much? Was there just they just failed so many times? you know,
yeah.
what?
I have the same question. I have no idea why I was moved so many times. Um, Especially now as an adult, I have friends, parents reach out to me and they're like, we asked if we could adopt you, we asked if we could have you in our home, and the state would not let us. And I even tried to get my records, and the state of Oregon sent me 8 pages for 16 years of foster care. They only sent me 8 pages, and almost all of it was redacted. And I was like,
Yeah.
they're like, they gave me this list of stuff that they have to redact, and it's like child abuse. I'm like, you're going to read my own abuse. It's my abuse. Like, why can't I know about it? And I think it also speaks to, I think the state, I don't know. I don't think they wanted us to be comfortable somewhere. I think a lot of it goes back to my sister's trafficking, because they swept all of that under the rug and they were never going to tell anybody about it. And the person that told me about it, I was, 19 or 20 at the time, and they highlighted all the important stuff that they wanted me to know. And if she hadn't said that to me, I would have never known what happened to my sister. I would have never known any of it. I mean, I'm sure I could have eventually dug it up, but I have emails. Like, they try to sweep this thing so far under the rug to protect the state of Oregon foster care system that they were ready to just never let us know what happened to our sibling. And so I don't know if it goes along with that. Also, the adoption that me and my siblings went through, the one that was like horrifically abusive, they were not even supposed to be adopting children from foster care. There was some kind of odd thing that happened with that, where they were actually trying to adopt someone else's kid, their cousin's kid, a kid in their family. And they eventually ended up adopting 3 kids from foster care. It was some kind of odd thing that happened. I haven't got to the bottom of it yet. But it also, when children are like maladapted and they don't, like, I did not know how to fit into a family circuit. I didn't know where I fit in. I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know how to integrate myself into that. And I also did not know how to listen to authority, because at a very young age, I had reactive attachment disorder, and I was also very independent. And so when, I basically raised myself from the time I was 2 years old, even before that. And you get into a house, and I think a lot of foster parents, or I think a lot of people in general, their first instinct is like, well, I have this bad kid, so I need to be extra strict on them. I need to teach them rules, and I'm going to be extra strict on them. And when you have a child that's gone through trauma, that extra strictness and that extra like structure that you're trying to place on them is too much pressure, and they're going to react negatively to it. And then when that child reacts negatively, and especially in foster parents that are not trauma informed, they don't know how to react. They see this child who is having a meltdown, and they're like, this is a bad kid. And it's not. Everything that a child does is trying to fulfill a need. And there's no such thing as a bad kid. And those situations are caused by parents who are not trauma informed. And I would say that probably happened a lot as a kid. I don't really know what or if it was because I was doing something wrong, but I'm assuming that definitely had something to do with it, because foster parents are not trauma informed.
Definitely. And you mentioned something which is like a gym word, reactive attachment disorder. Well, not one word, but just a couple words.
Yeah.
And I spoke about this before on my podcast, like these, like a reactive, RAD, PTSD, institutionalization, a lot of these get misconstrued because the behaviors of them can mirror being ADHD,
Yes.
They can mirror like all these different signs and stuff like that behaviorally. And a lot of people think, well, just medicate, or we just be more strict, or, we may not be, but no, like, very few times, I don't want to say no, very few times people come to the conclusion as, okay, this person is exhibiting behaviors. They may not be able to communicate how they want. So let me look at the behavior. Let me take a seat back and look at the behavior as a language, and be able to identify, what this person is trying to tell me, and be patient. First and
because
foremost,
everything a child does is to communicate a need. So the temper tantrums, the yelling, the kicking, it's all because some need isn't getting met. And yeah, you're right. They're trying to communicate something to you. You just have to be in a space to listen.
Definitely. I couldn't say it any better. So I just ask you guys, out there listening, foster parent, not, a licensing agent, what have you, take heed in that. It happens a lot, and it doesn't take much to really dig a little bit deeper, to see, where the root is, and most times with love and a nurturing environment and consistency and patience, you're going to see a turning perspective from that individual. But, you can't expect it to come on your time, because trauma is intense, especially if you experience trauma from the little bits of a young baby, nonetheless, it's been a part of majority of your life,
Well,
so
and
it's
from the
not a
parental figure. I think
right.
people forget that from the parental figure, most of the time when kids go into foster care, they've been abused by a parental figure. And then
Mhm.
they're put into a household with another parental figure who's trying to strong arm you about everything. And you're like, absolutely not. You're not going to yell at me.
Definitely.
I'm not going through this again.
And
But also, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's something to talk about too, because when we talk about parents, like mom, dad, or mom, dad, dad, whichever, we think about these titles. When you come in as a kid, when you come in as a baby, like this is a connection, this is a link, and this is like, unconditional love that's set there.
Well,
When you are abused, that link gets severed. I watch, and that's one of the most vivid things, I can remember from my own experience. I watch as that link start to deteriorate from love for my family, not just my mom, my siblings, and I watch, it was like day by day, I wish you were aborted. We hate you. Wish you were dead. All these different words, plus the physical that was happening, not just at home, but even from strangers. I was being severely bullied, in school because we were poor, didn't have much, and kids are mean, sometimes.
absolutely. Kids
you
are
know,
mean.
so I like when there's no escape, and what have you, and the person that is supposed to love you unconditionally. This is what you're told. This is what you're taught. This is what you know, um, and that person breaks your heart. That is lifetime of trauma. And that's something I
Absolutely.
had to explain, as I'm, and I'm gonna get into this. I'm gonna ask you about this, and dating for myself. And displaying that to some of the women that I was talking to and dating, and I was like, for me personally, I've had to heal from that because my mom and my sister were supposed to teach me how to treat women. We're supposed to guide me on that. We're supposed to show me unconditional love and what that looks like for the next woman that I'm going to provide that to. Now, what if I never got that? What if what I did get was only hurt and pain? So how do I supposed to take that in? How do I supposed to
Exactly.
lead with that? And that, and I tell people when I do like foster care panels to help, training, I tell them like most times foster youth, the title mom, dad, that is like a no-go. That is a skewed label for them, if not permanent, for a while, because the representation that was presented did a horrible job. So
I would say absolutely
you may not even want to
permanently.
record that for a while. You may not even want to touch that. Like, and so many foster parents are like, well, I want to call dad, and be like, look, it's nothing against you. I get it.
No, no,
But
foster parents are not a replacement for parents. And I think if a foster parent wants to be called mom and dad, that is a red flag. That's
yes,
what I'm going to
yes.
say. I mean, as if the child would like to, absolutely. But that is not something that a foster parent should like be desiring. I think I find that to be inappropriate. I would
No,
be
no.
like, absolutely not.
I
Absolutely
definitely
not.
I definitely agree, I mean, I still have my tendencies, like, when you travel into adoption, that's a conversation to be had, um, about what you guys feel comfortable with. But foster care is meant to be temporary. It's meant
Yeah.
to reunify. It's meant
Meant
to,
to be temporary, but
yeah,
it's not working out
yeah,
that way.
trying to tell you. But in that state of, when you're in foster care, it's supposed to be built to kind of help. There's some work supposed to be going on with your parents. Your parents supposed to be doing their job. You just supposed to be able to be in a safe place to be in pause in life. Not really pause, because you're probably still going to school, still doing everything you're supposed to be doing, the doctor's visits, all that. But pause from mom, dad, But a lot of times we don't see that pause get pushed back to play, you know.
I wanted to touch on one more thing before we move on. I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
It was what you said about that when we were talking about strict parenting, when you have a bad kid, well, labeled bad, I don't believe that there's any such thing as a bad kid. I went through a lot of group homes, and I've worked with kids that are in group homes, and you mentioned that you did as well. And, when I was a teenager going through these, group homes or different types of facilities that they had me in because I was labeled as bad, there's always one or two kids that are pretty rough, or they're pretty hard to deal with, or they're hard to get through to. And there's usually always only like one adult that is able to really get through to them and speak to them. And it is always an adult who listens. And it's never an adult who comes in there in strong arms and is like, well, you're going to follow these rules. It's always an adult who comes in there and listens and says, hey, what need are you trying to communicate to me? And for me, in the group homes that I was in, there was one adult, and if I had a particularly rough day, we would go downstairs and we would eat chips and salsa, or like just have a snack together and talk. And that was something that's against the rules. You're not allowed to like eat whenever you want to, but she would take me downstairs and she would get a snack with me, and she'd be like, what's going on with you today? And that's all I needed, was someone to listen to me. And so often we have people just come in and they try to strong arm. And is that something that you've experienced in your time as a teenager and now as an adult? Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah. So I've worked in congregate care facilities and juveniles. That is one of my tactics.
Exactly.
Because for instance, and I'm not going to say any name for, privacy purposes, but I had a client in my early stages of working in facilities. And for some reason, he, something had happened, and, he wanted something like a snack that, somebody had. And it was a piece of gum, I believe. Yeah, it was a piece of gum. Dude went off. They told him he couldn't have a gum. I'm coming into work. I hadn't even clocked in. I'm parking my vehicle, and I can see him walking away. Like, he's not even ready. He's walking away, and they're preparing to go, hands on after he gets a certain marker, because that's out of the, parameters of the facility. And, they tell them to come back, all this other stuff. So I then go up to the individual. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong? Just sitting there listening. And I'm not listening to respond, because I think there's a difference when you listening to just find a end to kind of say your piece. I'm listening to truly hear the individual, what they had to say, what was on their heart, what was on their mind, and what needed to be met. And the reality in that situation is, the person, I was like, where are you going? Truly knew, like, he was in there and he's like, I have no other place to go. So, like, I don't know why they're getting ready to restrain me. Like, I just wanted to walk. I just wanted to get out, and I just wanted a piece of gum.
Well, and as adults, we're able to regulate our feelings so much better than children. And it's a piece of gum. It's a piece of gum.
That was a saving grace.
That was
I literally was like, you want a piece of gum? I got a piece of gum in my pocket.
This is what you're mad about?
Gum. This ain't worth you get,
yeah.
And just, but the real issue with that was, it wasn't about the gum. It was about the person not having no place. Like, he's left in this facility. No one's trying to foster. No one's trying to adopt. And he's in this facility seeing kids get restrained, seeing all this, and he's treated as a criminal in a lockdown facility when he's done nothing wrong but be in foster care.
And that was my experience as well. And it makes you angry. Like, it makes you angry to be put somewhere, not because you did anything wrong. The only thing in life was you don't have parents that can take care of you. And now you're in a lockup facility because there's no homes for you. And I was definitely angry as well. But like, adults should be teaching to adulthood standards. So I'm an adult now. And if I want a piece of gum, there's nobody here that can tell me I can't have a piece of gum. I can go to the store and get my own gum. And I think that we run into that a lot with adults. There are adults who just want to control, and they say, you listen to me because I say so. And there's adults like you, and you're like, you can have a piece of gum, and it's not, it's never that serious. And in adulthood, if it's not like, that's how I parent now. If it's something that's not going to happen to her in adulthood, then it's not something I'm going to tell her she can't have or can't do.
Yeah. And I think myself and Grace, I come from a very argumentative family, So like, I'm really not like, I really don't do the confrontation. Like, there was one point in time where I had a toxic relationship with fighting. And, they had got to a point where it was like an addiction, like, to be in chaos, to fight, because I was never one, because my family were so argumentative. I was never one to just sit there, because I knew the climax of the argument where it was going to become physical. So for me, I beat people to the punch. What my trauma did was, I'm not gonna sit here and let you talk. I'm gonna go and do what I gotta do to protect myself. And then if you still okay after, we good. But that ain't my problem. So I started to be physical, and it was like 1 to 100, and I had to unlearn all of that, So it helped me, because that was my reaction going into this field, and in this field today. It helps me, because I'm never looking at things to try to continue to the argument. I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to, well, I'm the adult, you're the child. I'm not looking at it from that lens, and that's what I saw a lot of working in these facilities. I'm the adult. These are the rules I was told that you got to do. This is my shift. What, blah, blah, blah. This is the policy. You're either going to do it or you're going to get in trouble. Hell, it's going to be somebody else.
That makes people so much more angry too, because you're sitting there and you're like, not my problem. I'm going to leave here and I'm going home at the end of the day. Right. I don't care what happens. And I'm just like, and I'm stuck here. Like, I think I was 16 when I was in a facility, and, you see all these other 16-year-olds going and living their life, and I'm not even allowed to go outside, I'm like, so that would make me, I think that probably would have been a trigger for me if they're like, and I'm going to go home, and I would have been like, shut up. Like, I would have been angry from that point.
So navigating forward, we talked about your adolescence, navigating forward to adulthood, to life in this world, and I'm starting my first question with this. Going through all you've went through, watching, what your siblings have went through, and all of this, and that's, it's a saying, you got multiple people sitting in the car, you all experience a different, type of trauma in the accident. It's not the same, but seeing all of that, what part did mental health, self-care play, and how does versus then mental health versus now play a part in how you live your life?
Well, when I first got out of foster care, I was homeless. The day after I turned 18, I was homeless. I started just like staying with random people because I was, in college. I was trying to get through college. And I didn't have time to decipher my behaviors. My behaviors had me in survival mode, and they carried me. And my coping skills were not the healthiest, but they were coping skills. And they brought me to the point I'm at in life now. And I'm super grateful for them, even though that they were super unhealthy, but they saved me. They saved not my mental health, because it's not great, but they saved me from, I guess from like worse mental health. That is what our coping skills, and it's what our subconscious is there for. It's there to protect our child brain from, worse trauma. And so my coping skills shut down different parts of that trauma processing, and they did not recover fully. Ever. I don't think they ever will fully recover. But once I finally found stability, I joined the military, and I'm a helicopter mechanic now. And I got on my feet. And for the first time in my life, maybe when I was 29, which was last year, a little bit before that, I finally felt safe for the first time. I was like, okay, I've always had job insecurity, like just this paranoid fear that I'm just going to lose my job or lose my house or lose my car. And I just remember sitting there thinking, like, I'm not scared that, I mean, a little bit, but I'm not like constantly terrified that I'm going to lose everything that I have. And that's when I realized I'm in a safer place now. Like my healing has brought me so far that I feel like I can let my guard down just a little bit. And like I said, I am super grateful for the coping skills that I had, even though I had to give them up and replace them with healthier ones and do a lot of research and a lot of self-care and therapy and self-help. But yeah, they got me through it and they got me to where I'm at now. And yeah, I just slowly keep replacing them because we all have coping skills, whether it's, biting your nails or drinking, playing with your hair, bouncing your knee. Like all of these are coping skills to deal with different things in our lives. And, it could be literally anything, flicking your pen. And I'm just constantly finding little things that I'm doing and I'm replacing them with healthier things.
Definitely. Appreciate you sharing that. My next question is, throughout your journey, you became a mom,
Yes.
and navigating, relationships and experiences for people with lived experience can be tough, especially if you didn't have many good examples, of what it may be. So the first component to this question is, how did you navigate relationships versus then versus now? And how did you choose whatever style you choose to be the mom that you are?
I think in my early adulthood, relationships were a safety net. And not just like physically, they were just like a safety net mentally. And I think a lot of times I still kind of do in my relationships, I rely on my partner, like for lots of advice, like, well, should I buy this or should I get this or what should I make for dinner or what should we do next? And I think that comes from like people pleasing and also from not not wanting to upset people.
Mm.
And then as I got married kind of young. I think I was 22 when I got married and had my daughter, and we got divorced a couple years ago. And I think I would say I definitely got married. We were in love, but it was safe. It was just safe for me. I was like, okay, well, finally, this is something that's safe, and I'm going to have a family. I'm going to have this, and I won't have to worry about where I'm going to live or buying food. And I didn't feel like I could do that for myself. I was terrified, and our marriage didn't work out. And that's why I said, like, I think I was 28 or 29. A couple years after my divorce, I bought my own house. I got my own Jeep Wrangler, which I'm obsessed with. I love it. And that's when I realized I don't need that for my relationships. And I started being a lot pickier. And I started noticing in dating healthier people, I'm making better choices in who I'm dating because it's not a safety net for me. But it also, relationships are super complicated because even though you don't know it, there are cycles that are there that you're choosing subconsciously. And that's something I had to start paying a lot more attention to. I have loved a lot of people very deeply and cared very deeply about people, and they were not healthy people. And I was blinded to those facts because I was so desperate for that safety. And yeah, once I became able to kind of take care of myself and get out of that survival instinct mode, I choose healthier people, and I'm able to kind of see those red flags whereas I wasn't able to before. And for your other question, yes, parenting has been one of the most healing things I've ever done in my whole life. I 100% practice gentle parenting or considerate parenting. And my daughter is just amazing. She doesn't break any rules. So I never really struggle with punishing her or anything. We don't do timeouts. We don't do spankings. We just talk. And I've talked to her every day since she was born, all the time. I'm always talking to her. I'm always teaching her something. And I fully believe in speaking to children as if they are just small adults. She has, bodily autonomy. She has a right to say what happens to her body. She has a right to say, I'm full. I don't want to eat this. And I say, great job for listening to your body. You do not have to finish your plate. That was something that was traumatic for me as a child, is being forced to eat when I didn't want to, especially in like different foster homes and different cultures and different ethnicities. There's a lot of different foods. And, when I was really young, they'd be like, well, you have to eat all of this. And I was like, I don't want to eat that. And they would be like, you have to. And I would eat it, but then I would get sick because my body was not hungry. My body was, and I was also repulsed by some of the food. And yeah, so I definitely treat my daughter basically the exact opposite of how I was treated. There's not, I didn't have a lot of good examples of what I wanted parenting or how to parent. But now I just do parenting of what I wanted as a child, what I needed, what I wish somebody would have done for me, and how I wish somebody could have listened to me and treated me. And that's exactly what I do. And there's also so much great advice on there, and gentle parenting, like TikTok. We have so many gentle parents on there who share so much amazing advice. And they share things that I haven't even, that I've never thought of. I'm like, wow, I never thought of it like that. Or that's a great thing to use for, discussing this or discussing that. And yeah, I kind of just navigate it, what I needed as a kid, what I would have liked from somebody. And watching my daughter grow and seeing what I speak into her and watching her speak that into other people and even back into me is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. I never, speak down to her or tell her she can't do something. And I'll be in the kitchen cooking and I'll get frustrated. I'll be like, oh, I did this wrong. And she's like, it's okay. I'm sure you can fix it. And there's always a different way you can do it, Mom. You're doing great. And she just speaks to me the exact way that I speak to her. And hearing that back, is so rewarding. And I hear it from her teachers too. They'll be like, there was a kid that was struggling in class today, and Harper went over to them. That's my daughter's name. She went over to them and she asked, well, would you like to go over here and play with this since this is frustrating you? And she's able to offer them alternatives. And that's what I do for her when she gets frustrated. And so, yeah, just seeing that happen and watching her grow it's just been just a healing experience.
That's amazing. Yeah, I asked that question because, it's interesting to see, individuals who had lived experience, how they navigate parenting, and I've heard many different styles, I've actually I feel like I've known about gentle parenting, but didn't know it was actual name for it. Yeah. So I'm hearing this a lot more. And I was just like, oh, so that's what that is. Okay, that makes sense. So it's
I
really
just let her make her own decisions within reason. I give her left and right limits, and that's, you just kind of, I'm guiding her through life. I'm not
Mhm.
forcing her, you know?
Right, right. I only
Sorry.
have I only have a couple more questions for you. You know,
Okay.
I first and foremost wanted to appreciate your time and you being open and vulnerable and sharing from your experience. You know, my one of the three questions I have is what's next for yourself? You know, what's for the future? You know.
I'm going to keep doing these public speaking events. I think the next one I have is for CASA, and CASA has some trafficked teens. They have a traffic teen kind of like program or group within CASA, within their CASA youth. And I'm going to go speak to them and also speak to their CASA advocates about different techniques on how to talk to teens who are aging out. My main focus around foster care is aging out, 14 to 18, around that age. That's my main focus, and as well as trafficking. And so there are a couple of different trafficking organizations that I work with, and a couple of different foster care organizations that I work with. And yeah, I would just really like to keep doing that. I have been invited on a couple different talk shows, so I'm waiting to hear back about that. Those make me kind of nervous, but I have the anxiety definitely. And I've been slowly working on a memoir about my life, or a biography.
Yeah.
I guess it would be a biography if I'm writing it. And I've been slowly working on it, but it has proved to be very challenging to. I'm able to talk about my trauma very well, but I think writing it down on paper somewhere, or even typing it somewhere, that's a disconnect for me. But yeah, that's what's next.
Okay. Okay. And then what advice would you like to leave here today?
Today, I think the advice I would like to leave for today is, I guess for our overall theme is we shouldn't be controlling children because it's not an adult's job. We should be guiding these children through life, especially our most vulnerable children, children who have survived abuse and different types of trauma. Those are not the ones that need more strictness. They're the ones that need more kindness. And I want to hopefully leave that with everyone today, that we need to be spreading kindness and softness to these children who have experienced trauma.
Definitely, definitely. Any last comments? And this is a space you got, rap song, album, book, whatever, how people can follow you, or can stay connected, feel free to share.
Yeah. So on all of my platforms, Instagram, TikTok, I think that's all I have. It's Miss Lisa Pisa. And I speak about foster care on those platforms, and I post all my upcoming events, and that's where I'll be posting this. And you guys can follow me on there.
Awesome, awesome. It's been a privilege having you on. I'm glad we were able to connect. And I'm excited to see, what's next for you. I haven't done a wide scope into sex trafficking or human trafficking, but I do know a lot in a more congregate care facility. I've been doing a lot of advocacy because I know a lot about individuals being groomed, in these facilities or in these foster homes, and being trafficked right out of them. As soon as they leave, all right,
Yes.
you don't see these individuals or hear from these individuals, ever, and luckily, some do escape or what have you, but very few, and that's my experience on the matter. So I really commend you, on your work in that, and I look forward to seeing, the more you do in that, and reading, your autobiography one day.
Hopefully, if I ever get it out.
Yeah. But this has, been Resilient Voices and Beyond, episode 33. If you made it this far, we trucking along. I only have one more episode to put out for season 2, and then I'm gonna take a little break. Um, but before we get into all that, I know there's can be some potentially triggering things that we talked about, So before you do anything else, after you've listened to this episode or something that's triggered you or taking you off base or what have you, take some time, do some self-care, do some mindfulness exercises, bring yourself back to baseline. If it's something a little bit more in depth, that is more provoking, feel free to reach out to me, or feel free on your own to reach out to some resources. I would love to help you guys get connected if you want some help with that. But if not, feel free, just don't let it settle. I know a lot of times, you know, um, when you hear something or when you watch something, it can bring up memories that have been encapsulated for years, for some people. I just, want to provide a safe and stable place for people to be able to hear about these experiences, but also, heal, recover, but also get insight and be educated. So that being said, COVID is out there, it's real. Influenza, cold, and flu season, all that, is doing its thing. Please take care of yourself. Wash your hands, put the hand sanitizer on, wear your mask if need be. And we all part of this big old village, so just, take care of yourself. It helps you take care of the rest of the block, you know. Um, Outside of that, um, that's it, one more episode. I'm gonna be, doing some live conversations. That's something I'm planning to do. I want to get out into the community and do some events, but I'm looking for funding and trying to find a way to fund that kind of stuff. But with that being said, stay tuned to what's next for Resilient Voices and Beyond. I hope you guys have a good night, good morning, good whenever you're listening to this, and talk to you guys soon.